wanting to do this one for a long time. This one is medical experiments in the Third Reich.
Oh, wicked.
I don't even know what the Third Reich is.
Oh, it's so cool. Well, it's not cool. It's fucking horrific. But it's a great episode.
I'm not even going to tell you. You can just pick it up, okay?
Okay.
Because, actually, I'm about to tell you, so. I can't believe you don't know what the Third Reich is.
I live a sheltered life.
Very. No, you'll know. Wait, okay. So the Third Reich, meaning it's like the Third Realm or the Third Empire. So it alludes to the Nazis' conceit that Nazi Germany was the successor to the earlier Holy Roman Empire and German Empire. So it's Nazis, Kate. From 1933 to 1945, Nazi Germany carried out their campaign to cleanse Germany of people viewed as biological threats to the health of the nation. The Nazis enlisted help from professionals such as physicians and medical geneticists, psychiatrists, and anthropologists. Their job was to develop racial health policies.
Some of the smartest dumb motherfuckers to have ever lived, those dudes.
Yeah, they had their...
Their abilities to create things was like top notch.
Well, they searched for those
they
people,
just
didn't
didn't
they?
give a fuck. Oh my God.
Yeah. So they went to people that had an agenda, who agreed with their agenda and were top of their field and wanted to do some pretty horrible things to further their research.
Yeah.
Wow.
For the
So
greater
this is
good.
just an opportunity for them to just, get on with their research and do things that are really, really hard to just do on like lab rats and things like that. Do you know where we're going with this, Kate?
I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, we should be. It's pretty horrible. These policies started with mass sterilisation of people in institutions such as hospitals and finished with the near annihilation of not just Germany's Jewish population, but Europe's. The experiments were performed on prisoners of war, Jews, gypsies, and anyone who was considered by the regime to be racially or genetically undesirable.
So pretty much they didn't have blonde hair, blue eyes,
Yeah, it's sort of...
and went white.
Yeah. To further the Nazi agenda, approximately 7,000 people were victim to Nazi experimentation during
How many?
World War II. 7,000. This isn't that. That's not how many people were in the concentration camps. This is just
medical experiment.
from what they know from documentation, and like they did destroy a lot. Like when they knew that people were going to be coming in to save people in the camps, they did start destroying evidence. These experiments were conducted mostly in 8 concentration camps across Greater Germany. The people experimented on were held in concentration camps with others that were worked to death, starved and neglected to death, or straight up executed in the most horrible ways. After World War II, there was the Nuremberg trials, a series of trials held in Nuremberg, Germany in 1945 to 46, in which former Nazi leaders were indicted and tried as war criminals by the International Military Tribunal. And some pretty fucking fucked shit was documented, and you can read the transcripts from that online. So they took photos of, it's really faded, it's all like typewriter stuff, and it's got testimony from victims who lived, and it's just basically like, the court documentation. So everything the judges said, everything.
The lawyers said.
Yeah, everything, including the people that they were trying. So their excuses for things, why they thought that it was all right to do it, it's horrible. The unethical medical experimentation, meaning experiments carried out without patient consent or safeguards, were categorised by 3 objectives. Experiments aimed at the survival of military personnel, experiments to test drugs and treatments for injury and illness, and the third was to advance the racial and ideological principles of the Nazi worldview, creating a master race.
What the fuck?
Sorry, if I can't be inappropriate, I just have to listen.
I was just thinking that before. I was like,
no, fuck you.
Cam and I are going to be so quiet during this episode because we're actually really listening, and I don't think we can make fun of anyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I've just been
except
waiting.
For the people performing the acts when you get into
you can give them as much
will be
shit
copying
as you
it,
like.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
You know, they deserve it all.
Yeah. Well,
So on that note, we'll start with the typhus experiments. Now, typhus is a bacteria called Rickettsia typhi. It's kind of like the bacteria that caused the bubonic plague. It's carried by body lice, which breed like mad among soldiers in times of war. So soldiers often would go long stretches without changing clothes. It's easily transmitted lice to other soldiers and the civilian population. So it's a big problem. Now, you don't want typhus. It's horrible, and in approximately 20% of people, especially older people, it's deadly. Typhus begins with headaches, then back pains, fever, rash, vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, and eventually you'll probably go deaf. You could even lose your limbs. Nazi ideology had identified typhus as a disease characteristic of parasitic subhuman people.
no, they're just fucking idiots. So every time one of them catches it, they would have just been like, oh, no, he was just a fucking fraud, wouldn't they? They would never accept that's just total bullshit because there's no way no Nazi caught that.
No.
Yeah, no, like it was a problem with their soldiers. So, but they were saying they walled off.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if one of their soldiers got it, then they're not a true Nazi.
Well, no, they saw it as we need to get rid of these people that are spreading it to the pure people. So they actually walled off areas like suburbs where there were a lot of Jewish people.
Yeah.
To
They could contain it there. Wow.
I personally think that was just for show to be like, look, we need to do this.
That's pretty much what we're doing with Corona.
Yeah, like
germs.
These are scientists and doctors and stuff. They don't truly, like, you can't scientifically truly believe that is because they have like impure.
Who knows, man?
Back in those days,
knows?
well, you'd still have dickheads that think like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you do get a lot of smart, dumb people, don't you?
Absolutely.
So the goal was to vaccinate German soldiers. These experiments were performed on political prisoners, aka guinea pigs or rabbits, with the promised reward of, if they lived, staying in the infirmary for 3 months, which had better food, water, warmth, etc.
Wait, so if they live, they just got to go into the infirmary for 3 months?
To recover.
That's the deal. That's their incentive for doing it.
That's their reward for doing that.
At least
Imagine
Bin Laden offered 12 virgins
like as if
or
you
whatever.
had a choice.
Yeah, but like imagine, if there really was a choice, imagine the conditions you must be under to accept
Yeah,
that.
so that's the thing. They're treated so poorly that sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Far out.
And then they ended up in a gas chamber.
Lots of them
Oh,
do.
that would have been a
this-
bloody
this-
nice thing for some of these people.
This was the soldiers they were talking about, isn't it?
No, this-
political prisoners.
The political
prisoners,
prisoners
sorry.
were the ones they were testing it on for the sake of the soldiers.
Yep.
Because it's all about world domination. They wanted their soldiers to be better prepared than the rest
everything.
of the world so
Yep.
that they could conquer it.
Do you really think that for these vaccines for the COVID stuff, that this kind of stuff wouldn't have happened? Like, I know it's illegal in America and Australia and England, etc., but it's not illegal around the fucking world.
America has done
And they would do
human
shit anyway. Yeah, they could do it illegally,
China, Japan,
but there's
Russia.
no way this stuff wouldn't still be happening.
Of course, it's still
it is.
We
happening.
just came out with a bloody vaccine for something in world record pace.
It was it was in the 2000s, early 2000s, that America was caught spraying. Oh, I can't remember which.
Oh yeah, off the
friggin-
coast of
Yeah.
San Francisco.
They were spraying
wasn't
their
it?
friggin' crops and stuff, and pretending to spray their crops or something, but spraying people with things that were causing deformities.
Oh, the CIA
premature
sprayed
birth,
shit.
stillbirth,
It spread all around the fucking
Cancer,
country.
yeah. No, if anyone thinks that human experimentation in the first world is not happening,
You are blind and oblivious.
then you really
Yeah,
don't
you've
need
probably
to
had
look
some
far.
experiments done to your fucking brain.
Probably. So Dr. Helmuth Vetter was the main doctor involved in the typhus experiment. Vetter was a camp physician in Auschwitz. While in Auschwitz, he conducted experiments in Block 20, which was the contagious disease ward. He did this from 1942 to 1944. Specifically, he conducted research on Preparation 3582 for experimental purposes regarding typhus, typhoid fever, parutyphoid disease, diarrhea, tuberculosis of the lungs, erysipelas, and scarlet fever.
All the nice ones.
They all sound good. Experimental preparation 3582 was used on 50 prisoners who had already contracted typhus. They were treated for 5 days in the form of 2 tablets 3 times a day. This caused a lot of vomiting, which took its toll on the already weakened experimentees. They complained of bitter taste and a burning sensation on the tongue as well as on the palate. Then they were given the medicine as a suppository. This method caused violent diarrhea anywhere up to 15 times a day.
15? Jesus, you'd have nothing left.
Poor little butts would be so sore.
Oh, you'd be in so much pain.
Everything would be, oh my
Everything.
God.
I mean, if it
yeah.
causes a bitter taste and burning sensation in your mouth, imagine what it's going to do to your asshole.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well put. Yeah. Hey, and they're doing anal swabs with the COVID, so watch out, motherfuckers.
Are they?
Yeah, in China,
What?
yeah.
Oh my God.
No, what, drive-through
I'm pretty
anal,
sure it's mandatory.
anal swab?
Yeah, just like chuck a moonie
Can
out
you
the
just
window.
stick your ass out the window so I can swab it, please?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, no,
That'd
thank
be
you.
a fun family affair, wouldn't
Well,
it?
didn't they test Bolivar water and they found traces of corona in the
Oh, I don't
in the
know.
waste?
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain.
That's
I'm
scary.
certain about that.
I hope you're wrong about that. I don't want my arm staying inside now. I don't want my ass checked.
No, it's not Australia. Not yet.
Neither was corona until.
Yeah.
15 patients died due to the immediate effects of the medicine.
Shit.
6 died due to weakening of the heart muscle. 6 died due to toxic after effects. 2 died because of brain complications. 1 died due to fever. The 35 surviving patients experienced a drop in temperature, but other symptoms of typhus remained. 3 patients died due to the rapid drop in their temperature.
But they get to hang out in their bloody infirmary for 3 months.
Only if you
Always
survive.
look on the bright
I
side
don't
of
think they've
life.
got any. How many have they lost? 18. So there's not many of them left.
No. Now, Dr. Vedder also experimented with the disease itself. So experimentees were injected with the blood of a typhus-infected prisoner.
Ew.
Okay, so blood was taken from a prisoner suffering from typhus. This was then injected into the healthy-ish, non-typhus infected prisoner. What they wanted to know was the incubation period, the course of the disease, and the effects of different medicines. 19 people from Block 46 were infected with typhus. 10 of those died. Another experimental medicine used on typhus patients by Dr. Helmut Vetter was Peristin. This helped soothe some of the common irritations of typhus, but did little else. So he did not succeed in curing typhus, just killed a bunch of people.
You probably got a fucking medal for it.
Actually, a lot of
Nobel Peace
jumping
Prize.
way ahead, a lot of Nazis who ended up like being taken to America and
Yeah.
like,
Doing NASA rockets and shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
lots of them got medals. Lots of them ended up in the Space Hall of Fame. They had scholarships named after them. They just got to continue their life.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of, I'll get into it at some point in later episodes or later on in this episode, but there's lots of philosophical questions behind all of that.
Oh yeah, and yeah, not in this episode, but we'll get there. Got to get through the 30 odd
It's
experiments.
definitely a case of you don't want to end up on the wrong side of history, so just make sure you're not too firm in what you think should happen to the people that you don't like Nazis.
So the next is the seawater experiment. From July 1944 to September 1944, Hans Eppinger, along with professional,
Professor?
yeah, that's the one, Willem Beaglebach. If that's not the right
He had
pronunciation,
a
I
beagle
don't really
stuck
care.
where?
I think it's Beaglebach. Bleh.
Beagle Bob.
Anyway, Wilhelm, it's called, gained an infamous reputation for experiments on prisoners at the Dachau concentration camp. Experiments were conducted to study the viability of making seawater drinkable for military purposes.
Damn.
The subject...
I just got a whole
It's just ridiculous.
mouthful of salt.
Isn't it ridiculous? Like, I seriously, it's like, when did you come up with this
Look, if
shit?
you're that dehydrated, you're going to drink whatever. Like, let's be honest. But
Don't drink.
You can't drink
seawater.
seawater.
Yeah,
You just, you
Doesn't matter how
cannot.
thirsty you are. It just
You
makes
can't.
you more dehydrated.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
very
kills you
true.
painfully.
Like, you can't drink seawater.
But it'd be an amazing thing if you could actually figure out how to turn it into drinkable
Which
water.
is probably what they were thinking.
It's like, I think it's like 3% of the world's water is drinkable and 2% of that is in the ice caps. Something like that.
Oh,
It's
wow.
crazy.
Yeah, no, it's something crazy like that. Yeah, I've heard that before too. Yeah, so I could tell you right now that's a dumb experiment, but they went on with it anyway. The subjects were given a very bland diet for a few days, then deprived of all food. The prisoners were tested on in 4 different ways. Some were given no water, some seawater, some chemically processed water, and some with disguised seawater so it didn't taste salty.
The
How the
fuck?
fuck can you disguise that?
But it's still salt
Seawater.
water. Like, it's still seawater. So even if it doesn't taste salty, you can't hydrate on it.
No.
So the goal of the experiment was to determine what physical symptoms would occur within a period of 6 to 12 days.
How quickly can we kill people?
Yeah. And how horribly can we kill people? Because, like, dehydration is one thing.
Oh, that
Like, having no water
Not
is
just
one
how
thing.
horribly can we kill people, how long can we keep them going
Yeah.
would be another thing. Like, if you can make someone survive for 30 days off of seawater before you get them to a hospital and give them all the treatment they require, that's a benefit.
Yeah, true. Like, I can see where they were going.
Yeah. I'm just trying to play
With
devil's
it.
advocate, but yeah.
No, definitely. I
Yeah,
can
don't
see
think they think
that.
of it with evil intent. It just is fucking evil.
But because they're doing it on human beings, but
Yeah.
in their head they're not doing it on human
Yeah.
beings. They're doing it on subhuman people.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The trial group of about 90 Roma, which are like sort of gypsies, suffered from severe dehydration, great pain, vomiting and diarrhea, madness and organ failure. Holocaust survivor Joseph Chofenig wrote a statement regarding the seawater experiments. Joseph explained how while imprisoned and working at the experimentation stations, he witnessed parts of the seawater experiments performed on prisoners. Joseph described how experimentees had trouble eating and would desperately seek out any source of water, including licking the water from freshly mopped floors.
Oh, wow.
Joseph was responsible for using the X-ray machine in the infirmary and described how even though he knew what was going on, he was powerless to stop it. If you were a worker or a patient in the infirmary and you were found to see something you were not supposed to, then you were sent to the gas chambers. Following the war, 67-year-old Eppinger committed suicide using poison just a month before he was called to testify at the Nuremberg trials. He was a real wanker, but nowhere near the worst.
Isn't that a shame?
Now, the German SS doctor Sigmund Rasche, born 12th of February 1909, conducted
What are you laughing? Oh, it's your birthday. Oh, right. Well, your birthday.
Well, I wasn't born in 1909, but yeah, okay, share part.
80
The date,
years,
there's a
80
connection.
years, and
There's
you
a connection
both
with the
German.
date.
Okay, born 12th of February 1909, conducted deadly experiments on humans pertaining to high altitude, freezing, and blood coagulation under instruction from SS leader Heinrich Himmler, to whom his wife Caroline had a direct connection. The couple were pretty terrible, so him and his wife. They pretended to have supernatural fertility powers by kidnapping babies and claiming them as their own biological children.
God damn.
When found out in 1944, the couple were arrested. Russia was also found guilty of murdering his former lab assistant. He was brought to Dachau before being executed on the 26th of April 1945. Later, the Nuremberg trials judged his experiments inhumane and criminal.
Did they judge anyone not? Like, did anyone get off on those trials? I hope not, but
It's because there's more than just the doctors. There's the doctors and the people that assisted and stuff too.
Yeah, there was shit
So a
tons.
lot of people were actually didn't have any other choice. It came to the main doctors. I think it was all but 3 that they all got a sentence.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, and I might get to that in another episode, but yeah, they were punished. Like I said, he did those 3 experiments, and the first one was high altitude experiments. So in 1942, 200 Polish and Russian prisoners at Dachau concentration camp were experimented on by Sigmund Rasche. The experiment was carried out in an attempt to aid German pilots who might have to use their ejector seat at high altitudes. The experiment took place in a portable pressure chamber supplied by the Luftwaffe, which is their air defense. This was to simulate the correct conditions. The victims were locked in the chamber, the interior pressure lowered to simulate high altitudes up to 21,000 meters. The pressure would then be altered to simulate the conditions experienced by a pilot free falling from altitude without oxygen. Their physiological responses were monitored, and 80 out of 200 prisoners died.
Damn.
So Sigmund Rasche was said to have performed vivisections on some of the remaining victims' brains. Now, in case you don't know what that is, that's when you do surgery on a live animal without anaesthetic. This was to show that high altitude sickness resulted from the formation of tiny air bubbles in the blood vessels of a certain part of the brain. The remainder experimentees were executed. That's just what they did, because they didn't want you to. If you
Talk about what happened.
if you survived and you were aware of what they were doing to you, then you
could expose them.
You had to
Made it
die.
public, yeah.
Yeah. So if the experiment didn't kill you, they would
They
on
would
purpose.
anyway.
They would either, firing squad, they'd shoot you, they'd gas chamber, they'd whatever.
And a number of methods.
Yeah.
Sick
A
motherfucker.
huge amount of methods of, I've never heard so many methods of killing people. In a letter during the experiments in 1942 between Sigmund Rasche and Heinrich Himmler, who was one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany and a main architect of the Holocaust.
Yeah, he's the leader of the SS.
Yeah. Rasche reports the results of a low-pressure experiment he had performed where the victim, a healthy 37-year-old man, suffocated while he and another doctor took notes.
What the fuck?
Rasche described the subject's symptoms. As the subject lost consciousness, the doctors timed his behaviour. The subject started to wiggle his head at 4 minutes. A minute later, they observed that while he was suffering from cramps before falling unconscious. He described how the subject started to wiggle his head at 4 minutes. A minute later, they observed that he was suffering from cramps before falling unconscious. He describes how the subject then lay unconscious, breathing only 3 times per minute until he stopped breathing 30 minutes after being deprived of oxygen. The subject,
Long time.
Yeah, really long time. The subject then turned blue and began foaming at the mouth. Within the hour, they began dissection of the subject.
Fucking hell.
During the Nuremberg trial, the defendants claimed that the experiments were carried out in the name of necessity of the state. But the experiment during trial was declared to be neither necessary nor a scientific success. So completely pointless. Not to mention the
Just
horrific
murderers.
yeah.
They were actual just murderers.
You just tortured them for the so-called test subjects, like what they endured. How you can be a human being and watch that happen to someone. It's horrible. In a reply letter, Himmler ordered them to continue the high altitude experiments and to continue experimenting on prisoners condemned to death and to determine whether these men could be recalled to life. If successful, Himmler ordered that he be pardoned to the concentration camp for life.
Huh.
Yep, no worries.
To be worked to death, basically.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. Next was the freezing experiments.
Oh, this is going to be horrible.
Same doctor. He conducted the freezing experiments on 300 people at Dachau after the high altitude experiments were concluded. You know, you just sound like you said the doctor's name over and over.
Achoo.
Rasher.
Oh. Rashu.
Yeah. Motherfucker.
Oh, sorry. High altitude experiments.
Yeah. On behalf of the Luftwaffe, the purpose was to determine the best way of warming German pilots who had been forced down in the North Sea region or German soldiers who suffered extreme exposure on the Russian front to prevent or treat hypothermia.
Yeah.
Some of Russia's victims were placed into vats of icy water, either in aviator suits or naked, for up to 5 hours at a time.
Oh my God.
They forced others outside into the freezing cold and strapped them down naked for up to 14 hours. This was called the open air method.
Oh, God. The Japanese soldiers were doing even worse versions of that, actually. That's another one for you, the 711 Japanese.
Why is it called 711?
I don't know. It's what they named. They were doing worse experiments than the Nazis did.
Might have to cover that one.
Yeah, no, you
No,
wouldn't. I won't give any of it away.
break. No, give it a wide, long break after these.
That one's fucking horrific.
Like, no, not meaning to offend Japanese people, but they are well known for being slightly more intense with everything. Everything horrible in history.
They're going to do something. They're going to do
Japanese?
it well.
Like when it comes to, remember when we did the torture episode?
Yeah.
It's like most of it was adaptations of things done basically anywhere in Asia when they were done in Europe, and that that's where they took it from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they changed it slightly, but it wasn't always worse. Like a lot of the time it was like a slightly
more humane.
Less, well, humane's not the right word.
It's been a very slow progression of more. That's the guillotine's progression and stuff. They made it more sharp. It's like it is about killing
more
them
efficient.
quicker.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, efficiency.
It depends what you wanted to do,
You
whether
could word
it's
it both ways.
execution
Efficiency
or
is more humane.
like
you want
this-
to die quick.
yeah. But then the Spanish Inquisition just wanted everyone to confess,
Yeah.
like regardless of whether you can make anyone. You can make me fucking confess.
But it takes a long time to kill 100 people, so you want a good little supply chain of death.
Yeah.
Quick one.
As the victim's pain set in, they foamed at the mouth, writhed, and lost consciousness. The doctors measured changes in the patient's heart rate, body temperature, muscle reflexes, and other factors.
What? So you throw someone in freezing cold temperatures and wonder why their body's reacting?
Yeah. Like don't we already know this
What
stuff?
the fuck?
Like, surely we know what happens. I
Yeah,
mean,
but if you know exactly what's going on, then you can potentially work to.
you can help the
stopping it.
soldiers.
This is what they have to do. It's just they do it on animals usually.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which I don't-
and like
Which isn't
that's
nice
another
either.
topic for debate again, isn't it?
Yeah. I think a lot of people just try and ignore the fact that so much stuff that benefits us has
Tried
been
on
tried
animals.
on
Yeah.
very alive, very awake animals. So they tested, they measured all this stuff through a series of electrodes. When the prisoner's internal body temperature fell to 26.6 degrees Celsius or 79.7 degrees Fahrenheit, doctors tried rewarming them using hot sleeping bags and hot baths.
God damn.
So you can see what they were trying to do. They were
Yeah.
trying to see if you
It's
could
like the
rewarm
wrong
them, whether they would survive, how long it would take, depending on how long they were freezing for. An assistant to these experiments later told of victims that were thrown into boiling water for rewarming.
hell.
What the fuck?
Just, I guess, to see if they would survive, whether they go into shock, and if it would
that'll
actually
warm you
work.
back up, but you're still fucking dead.
It was just like I read somewhere about the witches that if they caught you and accused you of witchcraft, they would throw you in the ocean.
Yeah, and if you sink.
If you drowned, you weren't a witch. Yeah.
You're fucked
And
either
if you
way.
got three, you were a witch. Now going to get you anyway.
Actually, your dad was telling me about that the other day, Cameron. he was saying how the witches, they would hold their babies underwater in front of them, and if you couldn't do anything to save them, then you obviously weren't a witch.
Yeah.
It's like,
Wow.
just happy to kill babies to see if you're a witch, and if not, well, congratulations, you get to live, but you've lost your baby.
Belief is a powerful thing.
People are stupid things. So after attending some of the experiments, Himmler suggested that Russia find out how the North Sea region's people, such as like fishing villages and things, would warm victims of extreme cold. They ended up trying animal warmth, as it was believed to have a different effect than hot water. 4 women from Ravensbrück, I can't remember, sorry. From Ravensbrück concentration camp, a German concentration camp exclusively for women, were brought in to aid the experiment. The hypothermic victim was put in bed between 2 naked women, and this was said to be more efficient in warming them. Some of these women were even forced to copulate with the victims to warm them. Some 80 to 100 patients died during these experiments.
That's horrific.
So, blood coagulation experiments. Russia experimented with the effects of polygol, which is a substance made from beet and apple pectin, which aided blood clotting. He predicted that the use of polygol as a preventative would reduce blood loss from wounds sustained during combat or during field surgery. Victims of Russia's experiments were given polygol pills and then shot.
Fucking hell.
Wow. And the
One way
point
to
of
check.
giving them the pills?
Well, because they want to check out the blood.
the-
leaks.
the
blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were shot through the neck or the chest.
Damn.
Some had their limbs amputated, as a soldier might, and without anaesthesia.
You couldn't just fucking cut them a bit. That's bloody.
Yeah. And make
No,
them
'cause
Bloody
bleed.
brutal.
No, because it has to simulate proper
War.
They're trying to save
Yeah,
their
start small,
lives.
motherfuckers.
So it's not going to be like a nick. It's something that's going to be the difference between life and death for these soldiers.
Not odd like they didn't prepare. Like, sounds weird, but you know, why start? They're the ones that started the fucking war. Why didn't they? If they wanted to prepare for this shit, they should have done it before they started.
Actually,
the
a
fucking
lot
war.
of these experiments, this is how I think they so easily got these people to do it, is because a lot of these scientists were trying to experiment with these things before
Right, okay.
the,
So they're
the
little
concentration
babies.
camps happened
Yeah.
and stuff. Because all this stuff was the purity and all that sort of stuff
Yeah.
was all talked about before
Yeah.
it actually got to World War II.
Well, it's always talked about it by most countries. They
So-
do that shit.
And these scientists were trying to do this stuff before all of this like really kicked off.
All right.
So they were trying to do that stuff, but now they had the opportunity to get really like proper like data from experimenting on actual people. Yeah, so it's safe to say they probably all died. And the thing with these experiments too is that almost all of the documentation was destroyed before the camps were rescued. So the victims were often executed if they didn't die during the experiments. So you sort of are piecing it all together from letters, remaining documents, witness statements. So, yeah, who really knows how much of the information is missing?
Oh, probably
Most
at
of it,
least
probably.
80% of
Yeah.
it.
So a lot, like with a lot of them, it's like, okay, it doesn't say exactly who lived, who died, but then others it does. So I think whether those pieces are missing or they're just really hard to find,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So I didn't really find anything more on that one. Russia published an article on his results using the polygol without detail of human trials.
Of course not.
He also set up a company to manufacture the polygol tablets, staffed by prisoners, which is really common, like in the factory to manufacture things and
It was free
whatever.
labour, yeah.
So they basically, it was like, if you're not being used for an experiment, if you're not being put to death, you're being worked to
Right.
death. And they would, you could be working anywhere. You could be doing like a relatively normal job, or you could be doing like hard labor. So it's just a real mix of, they just used you.
Just in a cunty situation.
Yeah,
really,
you're not a
aren't you?
human, but you've got all the the things that humans can do. So you're just like the best kind of free labor there is.
There is.
Okay, so next is the sulfonamide experiments. From 1942 to 1943, experiments to investigate the effectiveness of sulfonamide, a synthetic antimicrobial I can't speak.
With that big words.
No, because there's sulfonamide and then it's like a product of that is sulfamilinide.
Right.
So they're sulfonamide experiments, but the sulfamilinide is what they were working with. So it's like a sulfur medication.
Yep.
From what I looked at, that's what I could understand. So experiments to investigate the effectiveness of sulfonamide, a synthetic antimicrobial agent thought to be effective in treating infections. That make sense?
Yep.
These were conducted by the doctors at Ravensbrück concentration camp for women. For the benefit of the frontline soldiers who suffered from gas gangrene, I didn't know that there was such thing as gas gangrene.
Oh, I think you're talking about separate things
Yes, so do I.
Yeah, no.
What comes that farted a lot?
Yeah. Who suffered from gas and gangrene.
The
Kate's
G.
got her hand up. I need some of that, please. So this is a type of progressive gangrene. Still not 100% sure what that means. Doctors would inflict battlefield-like wounds on their victims, then infect those wounds with bacteria such as streptococcus, tetanus, Clostridium perfringens, which is a major causative agent in gas gangrene.
Gas gangrene. Sounds fucking bad, eh?
It does sound bad.
Sounds worse than
does,
your regular gangrene.
Yeah. It
So I
sounds
got
horrible.
gangrene. Well, fuck you, cunt. I got gas gangrene.
The doctors would rub ground glass and wood shavings into the wound, then tie off blood vessels at both ends of the wound to create a condition similar to that of a battlefield wound. So I thought they were just being pricks by rubbing shit into it, but then I was like, oh no, because if you have a battlefield wound, it's not going to be clean.
dirty. Yeah.
The infection was treated with sulfanilamide as well as routine medications to determine effectiveness. Prisoners were also experimented on by having their bone marrow injected with bacteria to study the effectiveness of new drugs
Oh, the pain some people have felt.
being developed
Ugh.
for use in battlefield.
Don't touch my bone marrow, cunt.
Anything to do with
Holy fuck.
you can guarantee, and they did not give these people anesthetic.
Of course not.
Unless they needed them to stay perfectly still and it was going to be too painful for that to happen. They did not give these people anesthetics. So
Very brutal.
perhaps with bone marrow injections, they may have just strapped you down. I don't know.
Strap down, cut you open.
But anything where they didn't have to give you something to keep you, to
Well,
knock you
alive
out.
too. Like something like that, you'd probably die from the shock.
I think they found pretty quickly that people are pretty tough.
Yeah, but you can still die from fucking shock.
Oh, yeah, you can. But then there's just a whole bunch more waiting in line.
Yeah, but to avoid,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
man.
there's
Fuck.
I just read a lot, especially from people who did survive things, that there was no pain relief for afterwards and there was nothing for during the
Tip
experiment.
some alcohol into it.
Sometimes they got knocked out, but then even when you woke up, then they just left you, basically.
You think you could just fucking knock them out with a bloody gun?
Yeah. Well, who knows? They probably did.
Not unless they like to hear the screams.
That's morbid.
What so are these motherfuckers?
Yeah, so this was to test the effectiveness of the new drugs being developed for use in battlefields. Those who survived remained permanently disfigured. These experiments were not only senseless but completely useless. Anesthesia, like I said, was not commonly used. Victims suffered intensely and some died as a result. Didn't say necessarily whether it was
Shock.
before, like while it's happening or just later just left to die.
Oh, it'd be a little from A, a little from B.
In 1946, a survivor named Jadwiga Kaminska gave a deposition about her time in Ravensbrück concentration camp, describing how she was taken by force and operated on twice. Both operations involved one of her legs. She was never told what the operation was for. They held her down and put her to sleep with an injection in her arm. When she woke up the first time, she was in agony. There was a cast all the way up to her knee. Jadwiga explains that both times she was in extreme pain and developed a fever post-surgery, but was given no pain relief. Whenever her dressings were changed, they would have a sheet put over her face so she couldn't see the wound or the doctors involved. So she wouldn't know. Obviously, they wanted to keep her alive. So she didn't know what it was, what the wound looked like, couldn't see the doctors. However, she recognised them all by their voices. So later on, she was able to say who they were.
Smart girl.
She describes her leg as double the size, and it oozed pus for months after the operation. The whole time she was living in filthy conditions and still had to work in the camp. They took her again. She fought them, but they put her to sleep and performed surgery on the same leg. After this surgery, she had a fever and an open wound for 3 months.
Oh, fuck.
After the war, she was still having intermittent fevers. Her leg was very weak and she had swollen glands in her groin.
Shit.
Some of the other women she knew had had the same surgeries but never came back from the infirmary. And then a bunch of them that she knew did, and they all had the same thing done to them. So I looked up, because it wasn't just like showing up on Wikipedia or like other sites, because they don't go into huge depth.
No, they don't.
With a lot of these
some
things.
do, but yeah, some don't.
Whether
I've
it's like
noticed that.
I don't know if it's like a respectful thing, or whether you have to go and actually read things from the Nuremberg trial. So I just had to look up to see if sulfanilamide worked at all when it came to like what they were trying to do. And what I came across was it said modern antibiotics have supplanted sulfamilinide on the battlefield. However, sulfamilinide remains in use today primarily for treating vaginal yeast infections.
There you go.
So,
Soldiers died to treat your vaginas. Jesus Christ.
hey, it's very important to treat vaginal infections.
Well, how important?
Pretty.
Yeah, pretty important.
Hey, well.
But from what I read, it seems like it might be that they weren't the best at healing battlefield wounds because they inhibit the growth and multiplication of bacteria, but it doesn't kill it. So that would be why antibiotics would be used for that type of thing now, because that would kill it. Whereas the other one, it would
does it just
stop
make
the
it
infection,
dormant?
which would be helpful for a vaginal yeast infection because it's going to stop it multiplying. But when it's something that's life-threatening, or you're going to lose a limb, or it's going to kill, you need that to die.
Yeah, absolutely you do.
I feel like they should have known that before.
Well, you got to get to everything in small steps. You can't just suddenly have antibiotics.
True.
Otherwise, they would have had them when cavemen were hurting themselves.
So I'm going to stuff up a big bunch of names, but I don't really care because they're all motherfuckers. Karl Brandt, personal physician to Adolf Hitler. Handloser, Rostock, Gerbhard, Rudolf Brandt, Obenhauser and Fischer are charged with special responsibility for and participation in these crimes. Bone, muscle and nerve transplantation experiments is as horrible as it sounds.
What?
This one's fucked. This one is it gives you all the yuckies, especially. Oh no, it's right. I'll just tell you. I'll just tell you about it. From about September 1942 to December 1943, experiments were conducted at the same Ravensbrück concentration camp for women, again to benefit soldiers. They were experimenting with bone, muscle and nerve regeneration, basically to see if a limb or joint from one person could be successfully attached to another who had lost that limb or joint. The doctor's victims had their bones, muscles, and nerves removed without anesthesia.
Fuck.
As a result of these operations, many victims suffered intense agony, mutilation, and permanent disability. Now, if you want to look into these experiments, just be aware that the photos that go along with it are hard to avoid. Lots of people in these experiments were not meant to live. There are photos of women's bodies missing limbs, floating in some kind of liquid, and there's another one I saw with a huge vat filled with amputated legs, just floating, like just filled with legs. And I even noticed that in one of the vats with the legs, that there was a woman's body from the waist down, like just chopped off at the hips. Like they were trying to transplant a torso.
Probably
Or
fucking worse.
That's just where my head went. Like you've got legs and things.
Well, yeah,
here,
they'd be
but
putting
then
in there
you've-
to preserve them. The only reason why you'd want to preserve it is because you want to use it
yeah,
for
so
it
but
to
like
transplant.
yeah, just having like the bottom half of a body, I kind of thought like soldiers' legs being blown off and
Yeah,
yeah.
it's fucking. Ugh.
So that one is horrible.
That is horrific.
I'm not going to go any further into that. It's really hard to find information on it. A lot of it is
Yeah, they would have been pretty careful to destroy it
Yeah.
for that,
yeah,
because that would get disgusting
yeah. That's
in more
that's a
like every sense of the
really,
word.
really
Imagine getting
bad
his
one.
fucking torso chopped in half for real.
Yeah, no. So that one's horrible. And I think I'm just going to leave it there. This will probably be more than one part.
Oh,
for sure. It
cool.
may
Hello.
even possibly be 3.
Oh,
Ooh, threesome. Damn, so you didn't even get up to me. You haven't even got up to the worst.
Not even close.
oh, so I get
Sounds
a
good.
couple of weeks off.
I don't know about that. Maybe it depends. You have to let me know whether you think you might want to break in between or whether we just want to get it all out there. Okay, bye.
That was absolutely traumatizing, and I was visualizing it while you were talking about it, and that I think has just made it a whole lot more traumatizing too. Because if I was just listening, I wouldn't have these horrific images in my head.